Well, it's great to connect with you. Thank you for taking a minute out. And I want to begin our journey into your life as a storyteller, a humanitarian, an author, and an activist by asking you. I know we're getting tired of talking about COVID, but it was such a pivotal point for all of us in our lives. So,
Oh,
how did you survive the pandemic and how did it change the way that you do things now?
wow. Wow. That's a big question. Well, it's interesting because COVID happened. I had a family member who was ill, and I went for a visit to see them and got caught because I couldn't leave after that because everything was shut down.
Yeah.
But then what happened was I wound up helping out with my family member until they passed away. So it was a different scenario. Everybody was, it was a different lockdown situation, mainly because he had cancer. So I called I said, I'm the sterilization queen. I made sure everything was sterilized and, different dynamics. You discuss a lot during that time period. You discuss politics and you discuss history and you discuss things about your life. And, it was different for me mainly because of the situation, you know. Um, but COVID was certainly a reflective time. I would say probably most people will say that, where you realize you once again visit your values, what's really important, relationships, family, and it just it just wakens you up again to the trajectory of life. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's get into the heart and soul of what you do on a daily basis. I know there's a lot on paper. So I want to do it this way. I'm going to put you in front of a bunch of third graders at career day. One of the kids is curious and says, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" How do you answer them?
Okay. Well, I've had different phases of my life.
Yeah.
So, in the beginning of my life, now for a third grader, I'm not sure if I would say this, but right now I'm a storyteller.
Yeah.
And because I've spent my whole life listening to stories. And I've been fortunate that when I was a young person, I called it most of my family were elders. So I sat around and listened to them. As a 18-year-old, I'd sit in the square and I'd listen to the men tell all their war stories. I've been fascinated by people. I worked in the medical field and people love to share. They want someone to listen. So it's just the time period in life where you're accumulating all of these stories and you realize how important it is, number one, to listen, and number two, you can help others by sharing stories. And for
Yeah.
little third graders, and I've sat before third graders, I love them.
Yeah.
Their little hands are raising and they're asking all kinds of questions. And I become very energized by that. I
Yeah.
love their minds, love them. Yeah.
So talk to me a little bit about what you wanted to be in the third grade. What was your dream?
Wow. In the third grade, I'm trying to remember the third grade. I remember distinctly the second grade. Um, the third grade, I always wanted to be a doctor, a medical doctor. That's what was my dream. Yeah.
So
Mhm.
take me back to where you were born and raised. How did we evolve to this point? How did these seeds, these seminal seeds of both medicine and storytelling and everything that you do, how did that kind of grow into who you are?
Oh, well, my mother died when I was 7. And so I learned a lot from my mother. I learned, actually, I think the basis of my humanitarianism, it really comes from my mother. Because she was I have such distinct memories, very powerful individual. After the death of my mother, I went to go live with my great aunt, and I moved from Texas to South Louisiana to the Kelly family. And my great aunt was a retired school teacher who to this day it's called ARC, but she and a dentist, after she retired from teaching school, started a school. At the time it was for the mentally and physically handicapped. Now it's the name of it nationwide is ARC. As an 8-year-old, I volunteered at her school. I think it's just you have people in your life that, and then from there, I did a lot of I volunteered at a veterinarian clinic, taking care of animals. and then it transitioned into the elderly, and I went into the medical world, and I worked with organ donation, transplantation, death and dying. So that was my job, my tithing that I called in life, because if you're always in death, you have to find life. So I was very much involved with the arts, and my volunteering or my giving back to my community was I was the president of the opera. I was the president of Southern Repertory Theater. I was the fundraising chair for the symphony. Um, I was the chair of Loyola School of Music, visiting community to raise money for the arts. Very, very, very heavily involved in arts because I do believe that arts are healing. I think one of the greatest healings on the planet is through arts. So that kind of took me into different places, and then I just kept going, and then I wound up being the president of the Children's Bureau, and that was a whole eye opener. Um, I just my saying these days is if you live long enough, you're going to do a bunch of things,
Yeah.
and I think that's just my nature. I really appreciate people, and I'm fascinated by people. And it just so now I'm transitioning into the young people. I've written four children's books because I think it's you start off, the Chinese have a way you start off, the young person starts with an elder, and then you become the elder, and then you come back and you transition back again to the young people. And
Yeah.
and yeah, and that's kind of a little bit about me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. So who's
Yeah.
been a hero? Who's been an inspiration for you in all this work you've done?
Oh, many people. I've had many, many people. My mother, my father, my great aunt. As a little bitty girl, I really respected Helen Keller. Reading about, and maybe in the young people now they don't even know who Helen Keller is, but those were role models. And then I've had people, the school I went to, Joseph Campbell, all his writings were dedicated to Pacifica, and I was fascinated by what he termed the hero journey. He wrote a book called A Hero with a Thousand Faces. And the more I learned about people and the more I learned about cultures, because I'm a mythologist, the more I realize the richness that everybody brings to the table, you know. And I'm from New Orleans, and we have a saying, it takes many ingredients to make a great gumbo. And that's kind of how I look at life. It takes
Yeah.
many, many ingredients.
Yeah.
And so Joseph Campbell, and I've studied with Jack Canfield and Eckhart Tolle and Deepak Chopra. Um, I mean, my goodness, I've had a lot of mentors. A lot of, I've just kind of, I think just a student of life.
Yeah.
You know, that's
Yeah.
kind of, yeah. Like,
So if you could meet one person alive on the planet right now that you find fascinating, that you would love to see how they operate or ask questions or just to be around them, who would it be? Who would you love to meet and talk to?
wow. Um, it's interesting. I have never thought about that.
Yeah.
But I will tell you, the first name that came to my mind was Bill Gates.
Yeah.
He came to my mind because I thought, oh no, here's a man that take away the genius of Microsoft, but he explores humanity,
Yeah.
and he tries to find out as much as he can to benefit humanity. So I would really like to have a conversation with him. There
Yeah.
are other people too, but
Yeah.
yeah.
That would be fascinating. So, what is your motivation every day to wake up and to do the work that you do consistently? All of the work that you're giving to people, you have to hold back to evolve as a human being. What is that gumption for you every day to wake up and to do the work that you do?
I think it's in my genes. I'm a red-headed Irish girl. I don't know. I just think I came into the planet like that, you
Yeah.
know. And I'm very driven by music. Like when you speaking to me, music's like a song came to my mind, like you got to get up every morning, you know.
Yeah.
And so I think. Matter of fact, I know I am just driven by music. I'm driven by excitement. Uh, I'm driven. There are many things that get me motivated. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Mhm.
of everything that you've done in your life up to this point, what are you the proudest of?
I don't want to have to ever eat these words. Okay.
Yeah.
I I hold a strong code of integrity, code of ethics, and I think you're challenged on that all the time. And it sounds very egotistic to say that, but I feel that way. I feel like I stand to my core. Doesn't mean I don't make mistakes. Heaven knows you
Yeah.
do. Yeah. But I try to really hold to my values.
So, as a storyteller, what was the first book that you read that really opened up the doors to you that made you either want to read more or wanted to write someday?
When I was a teenager, well, obviously as a little girl, I read fairy tales and, children's books and things like that. But the thing that struck me to a core was a book written by Pearl S. Buck, and she wrote a story called Kinfolk, and it was that just stuck with me. She lived in China. She won the Nobel Prize in Literature, actually. And but she wrote about the Chinese people and how she, as an American girl, went to Chinese and learned all of their whys and wherefores. That book struck a chord because I thought, oh, wow, because when you're 14 years old, 15 years old, you're not thinking about the world, how large the world is. It opened my mind to, there's so much to learn. And through literature, you can learn a lot, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
That's, yeah.
So, speaking of teenage years, if you had a dream tonight, you ran into the teenage version of you, and you could give that young version of you a piece of advice based on the life you've lived, the wisdom you've gained, what advice would you impart on that young version of you?
Absolutely follow your dreams.
Yeah.
You you can take people's perspectives in, but you at the core know who you are. And so many of us go, oh, well, I'll put this aside. You know, I can't speak for other people. I can speak for myself. But I would say you have a passion in you, follow that dream and don't give up.
Yeah.
Just for it. Yeah.
So everyone has a perception of you, family, friends, everyone that knows you, clients, colleagues, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Oh my goodness. Who am I? I'm like that pot of gumbo. I think that I have a philosophy side, a spiritual side, a playful side, an exploring. I just don't see myself as one simple piece of a. I think I'm a piece of a puzzle. I think I'm many parts of a puzzle. I'll put it that
Yeah.
way.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So let's say we get off this call, time machine pulls up. You can go anywhere in human history and see one event with your own eyes. Where would you go?
My goodness, where would I go? Back in historical times?
Yeah, yeah, anywhere in history.
Well, I would really like to sit. Well, may I answer it in two ways?
Sure, sure.
Okay, because I'm also a very visual person. So the first thing I thought was I'd like to sit with the Greek philosophers and just kind of listen because they never really, they are always talking, and that would be one. And the other, it was I would really love to sit in a tribal with the native Americans,
Yeah,
or I guess now would be you would say indigenous people, but I would really like to sit with the tribal elders
yeah,
and listen to what they have to offer.
yeah,
Yeah, that would be cool.
yeah, that would be cool. So,
Mhm.
what's the best advice you've ever gotten?
My dad, my dad said it takes your entire life to build your name. It takes 5 minutes to lose it. I kind of live by that,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah, especially in
Yeah.
this world we live in now. So, if anyone wants to indulge in your world and your storytelling and everything that's about you, where's the good business? Where can they go?
The good business would be to go on my website, because that it tells you how to get in touch with me, and that's Nina M. Kelly, you know,
Excellent.
.com, ninamkelly.com. Yeah.
Excellent. Dr. Kelly, this has been wonderful. Thank you for your story. Thank you for your time. Best
Well,
of luck with everything. I appreciate it.
thank you. I appreciate it.
You
Take
bet.
care.